Shalom, Ta'ala Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Kwakadash. Double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, who the house of David be born again in this generation. And Shalom to the 130 Yasharala, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about Yuri Gagarin, the first Edomite to go into space. But let's read this first. This is Psalms 14:1. The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There is none that doeth good. Yuri Gagarin, he's famous for being the first to go into space, and one of the things that he's famous for is this quote here, where I'll read it to you. It says, I see no God up here. Right? So this is one of his popular quotes that he's remembered for. Now, this man has died, pretty much after his first flight into space. The Lord took him out. But for the most part, he was an atheist. Right? And he, in modern terms, would be known as a Russian. But racially, he is Caucasian, right? Also biblically known as an Edomite. Now, this man was the first of many Edomites to go into space, right? He was the one that the Lord has set up to be the first man to accomplish that for the nation of Edom. And this happened in 1961.
I came out to Revolution Square and barely recognized Moscow. Crowds of people were crying, hugging each other and laughing. I asked, what's happened? Are you from another planet? It's Gagarin. Gagarin went into space.
After all, a human had descended from heaven. Not from a height of 22 to 24 kilometers. People had already gone that high. But from there, from the gods. And obviously everyone wondered if he had actually seen God.
Gagarin didn't see God, but he was almost treated as a god. He was fascinated by the stars, and he became a superstar that everybody wanted to meet, from the Queen of England to a former roommate.
50 years ago, for the first time, a man left the Earth and traveled into space. Who was Yuri Gagarin, and how did he become the first man in space? Born in Western Russia, Gagarin had always dreamt of becoming a pilot, and after graduating from pilot school, he volunteered for the Soviet space program. Even as a young boy in Western Russia, Gagarin had always dreamt of becoming a pilot, and after graduating from pilot school, he volunteered for the Soviet space program. Gagarin's friendliness and intelligence made him popular among his comrades even before his flight. He was also a great father, as his daughter Elena recalls.
When home, my father was the same simple, charming, kind and cheerful man as he was known to other people. Whenever he could, he gave us all his time.
The Soviet human spaceflight project, the Vostok program, was an ambitious effort to confirm Soviet leadership in space, first established with the launch of Sputnik just 3 years earlier. They were not just important engineers and scientists. They were true visionaries who believed that the manned exploration of space and planets was their ultimate goal. And they were eager to move in that direction. Although several launches had successfully carried animals in space by that time, it was still unknown how a man would react to the weightlessness and isolation of a space flight. It's like dressing a man in a suit and shoving him into a blast furnace saying, "Don't be afraid, the suit will protect you." But nobody knows for sure if it will actually protect you or not. It's exactly the same thing here. Don't worry, everything will be fine. We just don't know what exactly it will be. It's up to you to tell us when you return. The flight that lasted only 108 minutes proved that a space pilot could successfully operate the spacecraft, communicate with the Mission Control Center, and take meals in orbit. He didn't get to actually pilot the spacecraft. Although he had all necessary controls to conduct a manual descent and landing, in case the automation would have malfunctioned. Gagarin's historical flight made him famous all around the globe, opening the way for further manned missions. What it didn't change was Gagarin's personality. I should say I even feel somewhat uncomfortable in front of my friends, that my first flight lasted only an hour and 48 minutes. But this, of course, was only the beginning, only the first scouting of space. Although Yuri Gagarin didn't live to make another flight, he left the legacy of the pioneering spirit, discovery and friendship that has shaped human spaceflight ever since. Dozens of cosmonauts and astronauts followed in Gagarin's footsteps to conduct ever more challenging orbital missions in the continuing human exploration of the universe.
So that really should have just said to expand the Edomite exploration of the universe. And the truth is that the Edomites have not really explored the universe other than the low Earth orbit, or what's known as LEO, right? Because they haven't actually gone into space, deep space that is, right? They haven't gone to the moon. That's all basically propaganda when you look into it. But this man here, Yuri Gagarin, he's an Edomite, right? And as you heard from the small video clip we've seen of him, he had a fairly directed life, right? He grew up in the USSR, which basically they didn't allow religion, which is why he grew up an atheist. It wasn't until the fall of the USSR where religion was permitted again, and which is why Russia now is a Christian nation for the most part. Well, the point being is that Yuri Gagarin, when he made that statement, it was, fairly biblical, because you see, besides his actions marking a turning point in the Edomite history, that is the plateau that the Lord would permit the Edomite empire and nation to achieve, right? It also, what he had said was biblical, because you see, the Lord has hidden his face or himself from these Edomites, right? This is why these Edomites do not believe in the Lord. And this goes back to the basic judgment that was put on their spiritual forefather Cain, right? Because again, the Edomites, though they may not physically come from the seed line of Cain, they are the spiritual descendants of Cain and that wicked root. Okay, so this is why the curse that was put on Cain follows the Edomites till today. Right? This is Genesis 4:14. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid. And I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth, and it shall come to pass that every one that findeth me shall slay me. Right? So you see, so ultimately, man, this is why these Edomites, they don't believe in the Lord, right? They could believe in everything else, from aliens to Buddhism to ascended masters to all these different things, right? Science and all stuff, the Satan, but they don't believe in God, right? That's a spiritual blind spot that the Lord had put on these people. And this man here, Yuri Goring, is a prime example of that, right? Though he was provided with this opportunity to be the first Edomite into space, you know, he was still missing that spiritual connection with the Lord, right? And as you can see here, you know, this was a great achievement for these Edomites, right? Regardless if it was the Russians, right? It was something that the Caucasian race, the Edomite race, was very proud of, right? And again, this right here began a series of these Edomites going into space. You know, just 8 years later, in 1969, you had the Apollo 11 launch, right? This is what we here in Babylon the Great, which is known today as America, are very familiar with, right? Because we're pushed with this propaganda. And this is also when the Lord brought Abba Bivens onto the scene to start preaching the truth of the Bible, hence fulfilling the prophecy of John the Baptist coming back at the end time, which would take us to the turning point for the nation of Edom, right? And this is referring to all the Caucasians around the world and all their empires that they had managed to build. The Americans, the Russians, the Germans, the English, the South Africans, the French, the Canadians, right? And so on and so on. All these nations from the 60s started to go down, right? Remember the 70s and the free love movement, the drug usage expansions, the women liberations. All those things were the beginning symptoms that the nation of Edom started to be afflicted with, even though they had started some of those movements themselves. But see, that was simply a stone that they were rolling that the Lord would eventually roll back upon them. And we are now seeing the outcome of those movements, what happened, right? The generation that came out of that, the baby boomers and whatnot, right? Well, this is, again, all biblical. This is Obadiah 1 and 4. Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest amongst the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. Right? So you see, the Lord set a point where he would let these Edomites, you know, get to before he would start to dismantle their empires, bring them down, right? And that's when they would set their nest amongst the stars, right? And when you look at these Edomites, man, for the most part, they always exalt themselves, their nation, right, their persona as the eagle, right? If you go all the way back to the time of the Greeks, right, they're represented, anamorphized animal was an eagle, right? Same thing with the Romans, and you got the English and the Americans, right? The bald eagle. Like, look at this, literally, right? The sigil for the Apollo 11 space mission was an eagle landing on the moon, right? And again, the whole landing on the moon thing, like I said, that's a farce. That was basically set up as propaganda, you know, like because again, when you look at the Van Allen belts, for example, there's two of them, right? There's this inner Van Allen belt here, and then there's the bigger Van Allen belt. Now, there's so much radiation above when you go through these belts that it would basically destroy any living thing, right? This is why there's only satellites that have gone outside of these areas, right? And the space station, which is the nest that these devils have set up in the sky, is only about 230 miles above the Earth's surface, right? That's where they could safely go, right? And just to show you a real quick video to show you that these devils never got to the moon. Here's a video showing that they basically don't have the evidence, the proof that shows that they went to the moon, right? Basically what's known as the telemetry tapes. Basically the thing that records the space flight, what they did, and all that stuff. Let's watch and see how they try to explain the missing tapes.
It was all recorded on these telemetry tapes. So where is this hard evidence? I haven't seen anything that indicates the telemetry data is even in existence, and as I said, even if we had it, we don't have the machines to play it back.
But your own research has shown the telemetry data is missing.
That's right.
Could this be true? Mankind's first interplanetary exploration and the original science data is missing?
11, this is Houston, radio check, over.
If it's anywhere, it should be here at NASA's Goddard Space Center in Maryland.
Doesn't have it either. The Smithsonian doesn't have it. Johnson doesn't have it.
Right. We've been unable to track it down. I mean, we don't know where this telemetry data ended up, and we don't know what path it may have taken. So, unfortunately, I'm afraid I can't really give you much of a clue as to where this data ended up and whether it still exists or not.
So you see, so that ultimately is just one of the many evidence that shows that the Edomites never went to the moon, right? Along with the man who said he was paid by the government to film these false moon landings, Stanley Kubrick, before they killed him, right? He came and he exposing all of it. And you also have other things like the wrong physics on the astronauts when they're jumping around, the flags that don't stand right. There's just so many things, man. But again, that's a whole other video. But again, ultimately, all these things of the Edomites going into space, maintaining a nest in space, setting up a space force, right? All this is to fulfill a future prophecy where these devils are going to attempt to fight against the Lord upon his second coming, which we are soon coming upon. Because again, right after these devils initiate a mandatory taking of this MOTB, right, which again we are very close to being upon, what's going to happen is that you're going to have a great martial law breaking out, civil unrest all over the world. It's going to eventually break out into World War III, and then that's when the Lord's going to show up, right? And then after that, it's going to be all chaos, right? A big earthquake, the nuclear bombs are going to go off, and the world is going to basically be burnt up, right? Not all of it, but the Western powers, the Babylon the Great, NATO and its NATO allies, and other parts of the earth, right, that are entangled in the coming World War III, fiasco, right? So let's read this. This is Revelations 12:7, which talks about this coming war in space. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angel, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And there you go. See, so that right there is John's vision of the coming space war that is going to take place between the inhabitants of Earth, or the Edomites, who have created their space forces, right? The Americans, the Russians, and all these other people, right? I'm sure there's going to be China in there, and all these other nations are going to manage to some sort of vehicle that go into space. See how it says the dragon fought and his angels? Those are these Edomites and their allies that are going to try to fight. But again, as you just heard, they are not going to prevail, and they're going to ultimately be destroyed. And again, this also calls out the dragon as being that same spirit that was in the Garden of Eden, that old serpent, right? So this is how you know that these Edomites, these so-called Caucasians today, right, that they are the dragons. Because who else is going to mount up a space war, right? It's not going to be the Chinese. It's not going to be the Arabs, right? The Arabs, I don't even think even have an astronaut, and stuff, right? I think they only participate in war exercises, man. But see, and also once you understand who the dragon is, now you understand too that they were also that old serpent that was in the Garden of Eden, right? The progenitors of the Caucasian race were the ones that were the snake in the garden, right? So, but I just wanted to touch upon this. Like, I thought it was a good bit of a history to show you, man, that these devils, man, that they, regardless of seeing the beauty and wonders of the world, that they can't see God, right? They don't see him, and neither is he in any of their thoughts, as the scriptures say, man. But that is not going to stop the Lord from destroying them. So, with all that, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Ruach HaKodesh, double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of the great millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect. Shalom.